I'm saying thank you very much, with that, I want to thank everybody who was able to participate in this auspicious occasion of the launch of the third edition of the Africa Climate Change and Environmental Reporting Awards, popularly known as ACCER Awards, third edition. And we are happy that we have achieved our dream of having a prestigious award scheme for journalists who report on environment and climate change. And the purpose of this has been to really build the capacity of journalists, to incentivize the African journalists to bring out that African narrative of climate change, of environment, and to tell us the African story of what really is happening out there in terms of environment and climate change. We want them to tell us how that human, on African narrative, on the narrative of that woman at very local level, the woman farmer, the indigenous person there who is struggling to adapt to the impacts of climate change, yet their story is not told on their language. And that is the purpose of this scheme. We are very happy we have reached this milestone that we are celebrating the third edition, and we encourage as many journalists as possible from across Africa, from both Anglophone and Francophone Africa, to apply, because this is the opportunity to sharpen their skills. This is their opportunity to work together, to networks, so that they are able to be the champions of our environment in different ways and in different categories. And we have noticed in our work on environment and this difficult issue of climate change, and that is exactly why we decided to start this scheme, is that the issue of environment or climate change is not as sensational as other priority issues. And so it is more or less relegated to the periphery, and it drives journalists away from it. So unless you are passionate about it, you cannot report it. So the challenges they face is that they may write very good stories, of course, and nobody will be interested even at media houses that they ignore them. And so we want to make it a mainstream issue. How to sensationalize it, to conceptualize it, to demystify it, to simplify it, and that can only be done by the journalists. And once that is done, for instance, to see how are we going to relate it with the livelihood efforts that people do. How do we make it more sensational political issue? So that is the challenges we face, that we write it on the narrative on definition of the West, which is not actually applicable to our local realities. And so the purpose of this is to bring out that, sensationalize, and encourage more and more journalists to have this as their area of specialization. You know, when you talk about climate change, it looks very abstract, yet it is affecting that farmer who is growing maize. It is affecting those bananas we grow. It is affecting the fish we tend. It is affecting our livestock. So once, for instance, you have a drought in Northeastern, nobody tells the people that this is an impact of climate change. This is an environmental issue, so that we relate it. So that is actually what we want our journalists to do, and to make it so that it becomes a mainstream issue. Once you are talking about disaster, you tell them these are disasters brought by climate change. That cannot be told by anybody rather than our journalists. When they simplify this language, they contextualize it, and they demystify it.
So UNEP supports this award. UNEP supports journalists to report on environmental stories across the continent. And we are happy to be here working with PACJA to make the environmental dimension in sustainable development visible and known. And as I said this morning, I believe that African journalists can play a critical role in bridging science and policy in this continent, and also helping with translating environment content produced by UNEP and other partners, and taking it to policymakers, and also translating it in a simple language for the community to understand the impact of environmental issues and also contribute in resolving them. Africa is not just about problems and issues. Africa is about also success stories. And look at what we are doing and what we have been doing actually to resolve environmental issues. Africa just launched the biggest solar panel in the world, and that's in North Africa, exactly in Morocco. Africa is working also on geothermal in East Africa, in this country, in Kenya, and also in other countries, including Ethiopia. We have done a lot in terms of fighting illegal wildlife trade. Africa has done tremendous job in terms of fighting illegal wildlife trade and preserving actually our natural capital. But there is still a lot of things to be done, and that's how journalists can help bringing those issues to the attention of policymakers, bringing those issues to the attention of the public, and also helping actually raising awareness about environment issues in this continent, and also reporting on success stories, reporting on the excellent work that African government, civil society, and the community are doing in this continent.
And more extreme weather.
This writer transports you to the unanimous that this journalist should be crowned the overall
our ever-growing
of climate change on our socio-economic development of this country.
Oxfam, Novib, CEDA, Finchurch Aid.
Thank you very much for your attention. Open to citizen journalists and bloggers.
Thank you, Brenda. I marvel at such beauty. Sometimes we don't even see it